Anchors up, sails it full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing pretty well, Jared. Doing pretty well. How are you doing today?
I feel like we had a pretty decent weekend of college football. We didn't necessarily have a ton of chaos, but it was kind of a quality over quantity sort of week, I would say.
Yeah, we had, what do we have here? Four?
Five top 25 losses. They wouldn't all necessarily be categorized as quote unquote chaos, but
four of them did. Four of those five did.
Yeah, for sure.
There was quite a few teams that were on bye week, next week as well too. It is just weird just seeing so many teams on bye weeks in November. But it's all because of the whole week 0 thing, and then the playoffs and extending all this.
And also
really screws up my thinking about, November every team is playing.
Well,
that's always
it's just the way the calendar fell too. Because even week 1 technically took place in August, like it was the last day or two in August. So it's also, I think, just because of how the calendar fell, it just made things a tad bit weird this year, as far as schedules go. Between extended playoff, new conference foes, a weird, some weird RNG on the calendar, it's made the schedules very abnormal this year for sure.
Yeah. Yep. But all right, let's not waste too much more into it. We got a lot of teams to talk about, a lot of moving around here. Moving around.
Yeah, so Georgia, Miami, let's not bury the lead. Georgia, Miami, LSU, Iowa State, and Pitt all lose. Those are your big losses on the weekend. Ole Miss taking out Georgia, I think, is going to have some really interesting ramifications in the SEC. We might talk a little bit about the actual standings at some point. But yeah, those are your big losses on the weekend for sure. Big winners on the weekend. Oregon looks dominant. Ohio State looks dominant. Texas looked dominant. Penn State, I did. Yeah. That was a dominant win for sure. I honestly forgot even what that score was. Tennessee, good win. Notre Dame, good win. Alabama is one of the least consistent teams this year. They either look pathetic. I was about to say depending upon the game, but hell, sometimes depending upon the half. Alabama is an incredibly inconsistent team. We did have SMU, Texas A&M, Kansas State, and Louisville as our top 25 teams that were on bye this week. So we won't be talking much about them this week. You want to get into the tier list?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
All right. Where do you want to start?
Oh, Oregon wins.
Yeah.
Ohio State wins. Texas wins.
All in.
They all stay where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
We've always had four teams in the S tier. I think it was just kind of tradition for the past number of years, as previously we always had the S tier were the playoff team, playoff members in our eyes.
I think we've had it three,
and I think we've
at certain kind of points this year.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of stayed with that to a degree,
for the most part. Not strictly.
But I think this week we may change it up. We may change it up this week here, but definitely those three, absolutely. I think those three teams are, out of the rest of the teams in the bubble or who would make the playoffs, I think those are the most consistent three: Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, they're, in my mind, still the favorites to win it all. It's not to say that they will. There are some other teams that I think are perfectly capable of pulling an upset, yada, yada, yada. But to me, I would say the three teams who are the favorite to win it all. And aside from dropping Georgia out of that list, it's largely been these three all year for us. You know, Bama got in there at some point, and Georgia has sort of jumped in and out of the S tier at different points this year. But those three are the teams. We said at the beginning of the year. I think we're going to continue to say it. And we are dropping Georgia after their second loss down to A tier, Kyle. Confirmed? Agreed?
Yeah. I think down to A tier. It's their second loss. But gosh, their offense is in a world of hurt. They're in a world of hurt here.
Beck is so wildly inconsistent.
Yeah, he was 20 for 31, one interception. He only had 186 yards on 31 attempts.
Do you have his fumble stats in front? Yeah, I was about to say.
Fumbled it twice, lost one of those.
Yeah.
So he contributed for no touchdowns but contributed for 2 turnovers for Georgia.
Zach says Indiana, BYU, and Texas are favorites. We'll talk about Indiana and BYU.
But the rushing attack wasn't any help either. 33 attempts, 1.8 per rush.
Yeah. And I think they have some offensive line issues too. It's easy to throw all of it on Beck, but like the pass rush was on him the entire football game. So I think Georgia's having some pretty significant offensive line issues. I think that's, I don't know that team intimately, and I think they've had some injuries along the offensive line, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they're having some serious offensive line issues, and it's really easy to put all of that on Beck. And I'm not totally excusing him either. Don't get me wrong, but there are clearly some offensive line issues.
5 sacks. 5 sacks for Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, Kyle.
All right.
You hinted at not wanting to replace Georgia.
Well, let's talk about the A tier.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the A tier teams here. So
let's keep in mind, we'll probably end up we'll see. We might end up dropping Miami out of it. We'll talk about that when we get there. But as we talk about these A tier teams, let's keep in the back of our heads that we can move as many of them or as few of them up to S tier as we want to. So everyone just keep that in the back of their heads as we roll through these.
Yep. All right. Just go left to right. This is in no particular order. This is just how we had it in here, no particular order. But so Notre Dame.
Yeah. Stomps Florida State, but I don't know what that means anymore, to be honest with you.
I don't either, but Notre Dame still with 1 loss. Yeah, they stay as a playoff team.
Florida State's 1-9.
I just don't understand that. Like,
can I ask you a question? And I'm not even necessarily looking for a definitive answer at this point, but I just need to ask this question out loud because I think it's an interesting question. What is the more fascinating story this year? Florida State 1-9 or Indiana 10-0? Like if you got to sit down and watch a 90-minute documentary that was the anatomy of Indiana or the anatomy of Florida State circa 2024, which one are you watching?
Gosh, that's really tough. You have a lot of media before the season started. They were saying, hey, Indiana is going to be one of, if not the worst Big Ten team.
They were considered a bottom 2, bottom 3 team in the Big Ten this year. Yeah.
And then the vice versa. Florida State
was considered one of the top 2 teams in the ACC this year.
I don't know which one. They're both equal. They're both equal in just the complete opposite directions.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not even looking for an answer to that question. I just want everyone to think about it because I don't have a definitive answer for it either.
Yeah. Indiana.
Speaking of
5-point victory over Michigan. Indiana 10-0 for the first time in program history.
Yeah. Not since the 1994 Independence Bowl. That's a joke. No one fact check me on that.
There's some looking at that game there. It looked like Indiana being up 17-3 at halftime.
Yeah. I think they scored 14 of that. Didn't they score 14 of that in the first quarter? It looked like Indiana was going to. It looked like Indiana was absolutely going to. No? Okay. It looked like Indiana was absolutely going to stomp Michigan. Like, it looked like a rout from the very beginning. And then I was thinking to myself, because I said it last week. We haven't seen Indiana play a good one of the top tier Big Ten defenses yet. And say what you want to say about Michigan as a team and say what you want to say about Michigan's offense. But I do consider Michigan's defense to be one of the top tier defenses in the Big Ten. Along with, well, I'm kind of wavering on including Iowa in that all of a sudden, but Iowa's not in the scope of this week's podcast. Yeah. So we're just going to let that go. Oregon and Ohio State. So with a great deal of interest, am I watching this Indiana Michigan game? Because I want to know what this Indiana team's got. And I have to say, through the first half, I was a little concerned. This Indiana team was absolutely 100% what we kind of thought that they were going to be. But then the second half started.
Yeah, the second half started and Indiana throws that interception deep in their own territory there. Michigan can't capitalize, only gets a field goal out of that. And Indiana only got 18 total offensive yards in that second half. So, I mean
Kyle, hold on. Time out. Don't say that so quickly. Say that again with some emphasis.
18 yards.
Yeah.
The entire second half.
They got 18 yards the entirety of a competitive second half football game.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at their last competitive drive where they got the field goal. That was a 6-play, 16 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take that away, and they only had 2 yards somewhere else the entire second half.
We just made Esquire blush with that stat. Hey, Esquire, you want to know what makes that stat even better? Indiana still had more total yards than Michigan.
Yeah.
So Indiana did not hold up against one of the top tier defenses the Big Ten has to offer. Maybe making me feel a little bit better about the Ohio State Indiana game coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say maybe a little more concerned about the Ohio State Michigan game coming up, but Michigan's offense is still Michigan's offense. So,
yeah.
Now, Kyle,
Indiana stays where they're at, though. Indiana stays where they're
100%. Through the first half, I'm like, we're going to have to S tier Indiana. At the end of that first half, I'm like, we're going to have to S tier Indiana. They actually are that good. Then the second half happened. I'm like, nah, they can stay in A tier.
Yeah.
Boise next on the list, Kyle.
Yeah. Boise State comes out with a 21 victory over Nevada. Boise State finally getting a scare after they seem to be just doing well these last few weeks here, and I guess they needed they needed to be able to win a close game here. So,
and it needs to be said that Nevada is one of, if not the worst team in the Mountain West this year, which makes this especially surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nevada was 3-7 coming into this football game. So kind of an unexpected close call for Boise, but they keep winning. And we need a group of 5 team in the A tier. They need to be represented per the playoff rules. So
they do. So
they will remain in A tier because I don't know who the hell we'd replace them with at this point.
Yep. BYU was on a bye week.
Probably should be considered Boise's version of our Nebraska game. Absolutely, Esquire. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry. BYU was not on bye week. That's right. They had the Holy War against Utah, where they came back to win by 1 point.
The athletic director of Utah, not happy.
Yeah, not happy at all.
He said that the game was stolen from them. It's one of the. I mean, I don't even know how often the athletic director talks after a football game, but. He took the mic. Kyle, do you feel especially screwed? This was your chaos pick.
Oh, sure. That was a lot of points.
I mean, my chaos pick was Florida beating Texas, and that was never going to happen. I may have forgot that they didn't have Lagway anymore when I made that pick. That's my bad. Tennessee, Kyle.
But BYU stays undefeated. They stay where they're at.
Yeah, I don't. With all due respect to BYU, I'm not afraid.
I agree. Yeah, Tennessee. Tennessee with a 33-14 victory over Mississippi State. Nico went down with an injury. I haven't heard anything about Nico yet, but that's definitely a concern moving forward with Tennessee's offense.
Esquire, same. Esquire says, I fell asleep thinking Utah won and never bothered to check. Yeah. Same. Yeah. Getting old.
Thoughts on Tennessee here?
This could have been trouble for them if they weren't playing Mississippi State, but Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC this year. I feel very comfortable in saying. I don't think anyone's going to fight me on that.
Has not won a conference game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess Tennessee stays there as currently the second best SEC team.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's our only other SEC team in the playoff right now. And well, it depends upon if are we going to keep Georgia in A tier?
Well, let's talk about the other teams first.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Because we bumped Georgia down from S tier to A tier. We haven't discussed yet if they're going to remain in A tier or drop down to B tier, but we'll have that conversation.
Sure. Penn State stays where they're at with a 35-6 victory over Washington.
Yep. We've seen in the past Penn State fall apart after losing to Ohio State. Like they lose to Ohio State and then like their season kind of crumbles afterwards. So just, congrats to Penn State for keeping their shit together after a loss.
Yep. SMU was on a bye week.
But big news for SMU is that Miami lost.
Yeah, that would put them first right now in the ACC.
I mean,
future ACC champ SMU.
Hey Kyle, how long's SMU been in the ACC?
Not even a year.
It's the first year. How long has Miami been in the ACC?
15, I would say 20 years.
I don't remember the exact year. Zach says since 2003. So I'm going to trust Zach. And we'll say about 20 years.
2004.
2004. So 20 years. Combined between them, how many ACC titles do they have? The answer is zero.
I'm going to say zero. Yeah.
The answer is zero. No, Zach, that was pretty good considering you got that off the top of your head. So I'm just saying, you might have brand new to the conference SMU and Miami 20 years in the conference, both playing for their first ACC title. That's what it's currently shaping up to be. Just saying. All right, Kyle, do we actually talk about the Georgia game now?
Yeah, Georgia lost to Ole Miss 28-10. So here's the tough thing here. Like, should Alabama move up? I know we haven't talked about Alabama. Alabama with a big win,
Kyle,
over LSU on the road there. And then you have Georgia losing, but Ole Miss with a big win against Georgia here. Like, is the SEC trying to fit in more teams that's trying to come in, which means that some of these other teams are having to go, won't be in ultimately?
The SEC is very mid this year. There's a lot of teams in the middle. I said it in another thread. Bama is going to get outsized credit for the LSU win unjustifiably. I think so too. I think LSU is a tad bit overrated. This is their third loss on the year.
It's a huge win though on the road in LSU. I mean, record or not, like that's an impressive win.
Especially when you do it 42-13. I'm not trying to.
Yes.
Is Brian Kelly on the hot seat? Yeah, he is.
Everywhere he goes.
Yeah, I mean, he should be. I don't know if he is or not, but he should be. I tell you what, Kyle, let's do this. Let's drop Georgia and Miami out of A tier. Okay. Just stick with me here for a second. Now, let's, with all due respect to Army, Louisiana Lafayette and Tulane, we're having a big boy conversation right now. We're having big boy conversation. We'll talk to you guys later. We'll talk to you guys if something happens to Boise. But for right now, adults are talking. So go to the kids table, Army, Tulane, and Louisiana Lafayette. We'll talk to you later.
Everybody go ahead. Yeah, everybody grab your drink of choice. Grab something. Grab a snack real quick, and we'll get to this big boy talk here right after the our first ad break here. So the sloopcast.com is your go-to link for where you can find all of our lovely other links, such as the Discord, discord.thesloopcast.com, our YouTube page, the merch store, our 7071 store, and much more over at thesloopcast.com. If you want to help support Jared and I, you can head on over to patreon.thesloopcast.com, only $3 a month to help Jared and I continue doing this podcast here. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and take our first ad break and be right back.
All right, Kyle. Time for a tough conversation. Are you ready? Oh boy. I'm glad this is all happening off screen. I'm messing up the entire document. Hold on. All right. I'm still too zoomed out. Messed up everything. I messed it all up. It's all a mess. Okay, here we go. We have 2 spots.
We do have 2 spots.
In our predictive playoff, which is what the combination of the S tier and the A tier are. We have 2 spots. Potentially in those 2 spots, we have Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Colorado, Clemson, and Miami. So I say we do. Who here doesn't belong? How about that? Who here does not belong in this conversation?
A lot of people look at this and be like, well, seems like maybe like Texas A&M. Texas A&M is in the driver's seat right now of going to the maybe not the driver's seat, but they're currently right now second in the SEC in terms of standings, only behind Tennessee.
Esquire says Colorado may actually win the Big 12. Yeah. I mean, we currently have BYU sitting in the A tier representing the Big 12. We can certainly put a second Big 12 team up there. But as far as automatic qualifiers, we are covered. We have 5 conference representatives in either or both, in some cases, S and A tier. So we don't have to worry about conference championship necessarily. If I could make a quick argument for Miami, have to give it to BYU now, but I think I'd take Colorado versus BYU. Oh, Colorado money line versus BYU. I would too, honestly, but BYU is undefeated. So, and Colorado has 2 losses. It feels disingenuous to flip them at this point. Yep. Now, a quick argument for Miami. Actually, let me say it like this. We have 2 ACC teams in these 6 teams. 2 of these 6 teams, 2 of them get moved up to A tier. 2 of them are in the ACC. Clemson.
The ACC is so
top heavy.
They have it's all a big cluster right now because the top 3 teams right now, SMU, Clemson, and Miami, they all don't play each other.
Yeah. It's a mess because the argument for Miami is that of those 6 teams we mentioned, all of them have 2 losses except for Miami, who has 1. Now, should that automatically put them in A tier? No, I don't think it should. Because we could certainly have an argument about, who has Miami beaten? Who have you beaten? I think is just as important a conversation as who have you lost to.
Yeah. So if you look at Miami's schedule, they beat Florida and Louisville, I would say, are their 2 big wins.
That's not saying a lot.
Well, Clemson's probably worse. Looking at Clemson, what their best win is, I don't know. Virginia Tech, Virginia, Wake Forest, Florida State, Stanford, NC State, and App State.
Yeah.
That's their wins.
Are you comfortable? Let me say this. Of these 6 teams, again, 6 teams, we have to move 2 of them to A tier. I feel comfortable eliminating Clemson.
I agree. I completely agree.
Okay.
Mainly because they don't have really a good win and they have a terrible loss
to one of the other teams in this conversation, even.
Correct. Yes.
and I don't know all the tiebreakers in the ACC, but I have to assume that Miami, if the season ended right now, the ACC title game would be SMU and Miami, correct?
Yeah.
Because Clemson has two losses, and granted, one of them's out of conference.
Yeah.
But
as of right now, if it were end today, or if every team wins out, it would be SMU and Miami.
Okay. Feel comfortable eliminating Clemson from this conversation. So we have Texas A&M, Georgia, Miami, Alabama, Colorado. Two of these teams get moved up to A tier.
Yeah.
I'm most comfortable moving LSU down to losses to Texas A&M, USC. Yeah. And a blowout to Bama. We're not over there yet, though, Austin. Right now, if you look to the left of B tier, we're talking about who do we get to move up into A tier. That's the conversation we're having right now. We only have 10 teams in S and A tier. We need to place 2 more into A tier. So we're having a who moves up conversation right now. Simply Georgia and Bama, unfortunately.
I mean, right now.
The thing is that I don't necessarily disagree, but I kind of hate it.
All right, so let's look at the SEC here.
What are the standings right now?
So right now, here, I'll just go ahead and take a copy of teams that have 2 losses in conference here. So I want to break down the Texas A&M, Georgia. Really, you got to throw Ole Miss in there too. I'm not sure where Ole Miss is at.
I think Ole Miss deserves to be in B tier.
They do,
but I don't think they deserve to be in A tier. And
where are they at in? I think Ole Miss needs to be moved from C to B tier. Do
they belong in this conversation specifically?
No, you can move them to the right. Okay. You can move them to the right. Yeah. Okay. So Texas A&M. Let's look at them. Texas A&M.
I think I think we have to move up Texas A&M simply because we have 3 SEC teams right here, and Texas A&M only has 1 conference loss. Bama and Georgia both have 2 conference losses.
That's kind of what I'm leaning towards as well too. Texas A&M 2 win. Their 2 wins is Missouri, which doesn't look all that great anymore, and LSU. And their losses were to Notre Dame and a really bad loss to South Carolina. And I mean bad loss meaning that they lost by 24 points.
You just really zapped my confidence of moving Texas A&M up with that, Kyle.
And then Alabama got another key victory here, beat Georgia and now beat LSU. So they have some good, their resume looks pretty good too. And then their losses are comfortable as well too. 5-point loss to Vanderbilt, touchdown loss to Tennessee. They weren't blowout losses.
Okay.
And then you look at Georgia, they lost to Alabama by a score, and they lost by 18 to Ole Miss.
So let's move Alabama up. Are you good with that?
So you're going to move Alabama up, who has 2 losses in conference, versus Texas A&M, who only has 1 loss in conference.
They do have 2 overall losses.
They both do, yes.
Yes. And you said it yourself that Texas A&M's losses are worse and that their wins aren't as good as Alabama's in both cases, right? Like Alabama has both the better losses and the better wins.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, putting it, just saying it like that. Yeah. I think I would agree. Yes. I will note that a lot of this, what if Texas A&M beats Texas at the end of the year?
That would be a disaster for the SEC, quite frankly.
Wow.
Here's the thing. I actually kind of think Ole Miss deserves to be in this conversation because I don't know if I feel comfortable moving Georgia up if Ole Miss is sitting there, and they both have 2 conference losses. They both have 2 losses.
Big win.
Okay, but it's a big win.
It is a big win.
It's against the number 3 team in the country.
They did have a 3-point loss to LSU and a 3-point loss to Kentucky, which Kentucky's not as great as what people made them out to be at the start of the year. They're now sitting 3-6, 1-6 in conference here. But so it's a 3-point loss.
Sure.
It's not a great loss, but it's not a blowout loss too.
It's roughly equivalent. Well, I would say it's not as good as losing to Vanderbilt. It's worse than losing. Vanderbilt's better than Kentucky this year. Do you feel comfortable saying that? Yeah.
So my opinion here. So how many teams do we have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we got one more team. In my opinion,
is it Ole Miss?
You got a bunch of teams with 2 losses, and you have a team with their first loss,
but no impressive wins.
But honestly, like,
let me ask you this, Kyle: is the ACC going to place more than one team in the playoff this year, in your opinion?
No, just one.
Then I think that is also a huge strike against including Miami at this time.
Especially with that loss now with Miami to Georgia Tech for 2nd year in a row. Yeah, that really hurts ACC's chances of getting 2 teams in.
I'm going for Ole Miss.
Especially with Clemson not playing well either.
I'm going for Ole Miss. That I think I've decided that's who I'm going with.
How crazy is this? You see Georgia, who is ranked 3rd in the playoffs committee. They get their second loss, and then them dropping all the way out of the top 12, so to speak.
College football, baby.
I guess.
This is how we used to do it.
It is, yeah.
This is literally how we used to do it. Teams would go from the title game to out of the top 10 over one loss, and their season's over. That's college football. I don't know what to tell you. They're still going to get in, probably, but we're not. We're talking about right now, and now I think Ole Miss is most deserving. My opinion.
So who has the better win?
Well, Ole Miss beat Georgia.
Georgia or Ole Miss?
Ole Miss beat Georgia. That's the better win. They have the head-to-head.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, Jared. You're propping up Ole Miss. I don't know if I'm propping up Ole Miss. I'm simply saying that they're the 12th. They deserve to be the 12th team in the country. Which therefore makes Georgia a better argument. How so? I'm simply saying that Ole Miss beat Georgia, and I don't think it would be correct to put Georgia in instead of Ole Miss based off of that. And by the way, not closely. They won by 18. But Georgia beat Texas.
Soundly, too. Soundly as well.
And Ole Miss beat Georgia soundly. We have the head-to-head. We don't need to go grab common opponents.
Yeah.
We have the head-to-head.
Yeah. I'm in agreement. For this week, let's put Ole Miss in A for this week.
The better resume, Austin, is the head-to-head. Because I think the resume is roughly even. They both have wins against top 3 teams. They both have 2 losses. They have roughly equal resumes. Therefore, I feel like it's incredibly fair to go to the head-to-head there. Now you sound like an SEC homer. How? Yeah, they both have a signature win. What is wrong with that sentiment? I don't know what to tell you,
For,
Austin.
for this week, I think this is correct. I think for this week, obviously things will.
Hey man, if you're going to use the
change.
thinky emoji, use the Brutus one. Clemson remains. Okay, all these teams are in B tier. Clemson remains in B tier. Do we need to talk about the Clemson Virginia Tech game at all? We're kind of going long on time at the moment. That was a long conversation.
Yeah. No, Clemson stays there with the victory over Virginia Tech. Tulane stays there for the fact that if Boise State screws up, that's the only reason.
As is Army, as is Louisiana Lafayette. That's why we have those three teams sitting there. They are leaders in their respective conferences. But tell you what, we'll talk more about those teams. We'll talk about if anyone needs to move up from C tier to B tier, and we'll talk about the fate of Iowa State, Pitt, and LSU after this commercial break. So let's do a quick ad. Kyle already did all the links and stuff at the top, so I'm just going to do a quick one. Come join our Discord server, discord.thesloopcast.com. Support us financially at patreon.thesloopcast.com. And if you are looking for any of the links that Kyle talked about earlier, you can find all of those links at simply thesloopcast.com. Here are those ads now. All right, we're back. Now, Tulane, Louisiana Lafayette, Army. We have, as Kyle said, we have these teams here as sort of backups in case Boise slips. I think they almost did. And they almost did. So I think we'll keep those teams in B tier for now. Iowa State, LSU, and Pitt all lose this weekend. Let's talk about those games.
They all go down.
Yes. Pitt loses to Virginia. LSU had a rough outing, I would say. And Pitt lost to Virginia. I already said that. Iowa State got crushed. I think they actually end up come back a bit to make it not look so bad. That game finishes 45-36 against a 3-6 Kansas team. And again, like, they made a bit of a comeback to make that score look a lot better than it was. Second straight slip for Iowa State. I feel comfortable dropping all three of these teams.
I as well.
Kansas better than their record, to be fair. I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment, Austin. I mean,
Iowa State
3-6 is 3-6.
Iowa State would need a lot of help to get back into the Big 12 championship talk here. So, yeah, Iowa State goes down. LSU.
What are the standings in the Big 12 right now? You got BYU and Colorado are going to be your 1 and 2, obviously.
I'm going to put in the chat the teams with 2 conference losses here. That includes BYU undefeated, Colorado with 1, Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona State, and West Virginia, all with 2 losses.
Yeah, that's... Sheesh.
They need
what a mess. Meanwhile, the Big 12 commissioners just praying that Colorado is the team that gets in.
Yeah.
They're of all of those teams,
like the ACC, only one team from the Big 12 is getting in.
Oh, for sure. I just don't even know how to represent the Big 12 in B tier right now, to be honest with you. We're dropping out Iowa State. Do we replace them with another Big 12 team? Should we drop out Iowa State? I still think yes, we do. And, maybe we just move some other Big 12 teams to the left of C.
So Iowa State, you can move them down to C tier. Pitt's on a downward spiral right now. So Pitt going down as well. Their second loss of the year, second loss in conference here, but we talked about SMU and Clemson and Arizona ahead of them. They would need Pittsburgh would need a lot of help.
Arizona.
Pittsburgh does play Clemson this weekend. So
you mean Miami?
No, Pittsburgh plays Clemson this weekend.
No, you said Arizona in the ACC, which is obviously not.
Did I?
Yeah.
SMU, Clemson, and Miami are the teams above Pittsburgh right now, and would need a lot of help to get back into the ACC championship here.
And we're also moving LSU down.
Yep. I mean, just like what we talked about last week, this is how it's supposed to be as the year goes on. Less and less teams in the bubble here, so that this list is getting shrunk down a little bit. We did add one team. From C tier all the way to A tier.
We did. Hey, listen, you beat Georgia, who was number 3. That's a big rocket ride. Can I make recommendations for M tier? Yes, but not yet. Kyle, anyone you currently see in C tier who we should move up? I have some teams off to the left. They're mostly group of 5 teams that I'm just sort of keeping track of in case we have Boise fall and we need to have a big conversation. I don't think any of them need to be moved up this week. So I have Navy, Memphis, UNLV, Jack State, Sam Houston, Georgia Southern, Colorado State, just sort of stashed away. I think they're teams to keep an eye on, but I don't believe it necessary to move any of them up this week.
So South Carolina, you can just move off to the right. Like they have 3 losses in conference. They're not getting in. They're not getting in at all.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like, trying to say nothing about it.
I mean, the curious one is Washington State. Washington State sitting there at 8-1 right now with the 1 loss against Boise State. Schedule doesn't help them out. They finished the season with New Mexico, Oregon State, and Wyoming. They need teams to lose ahead of them. That's the only way that Washington State gets into the playoffs is if teams ahead of them lose.
And even then.
Yeah, even then, yeah. So I mean that like Clemson loses, Colorado loses, Army loses, SMU loses, Boise State loses, and more. And more need to happen. And I just don't see it.
I feel comfortable as far as C tier goes and B tier and A tier and S tier goes. I feel comfortable with what we currently have up on the board. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still kind of torn about having Ole Miss in A tier, but I'm fine this week. Right
yeah. No, I mean,
we already talked about it.
It's a close call. It could have been Georgia. We could have made an argument for Miami. But eventually we had to pick someone. We spent a lot of time on that.
We did.
And we might just change it next week just cause it's not set in stone or anything. All right, Austin, if you have that M tier recommendation, I think now would be a good time.
Someone with high expectations.
Oklahoma threw the game away against Missouri this week. They are now 5-5. And hey, Kyle, while I read this, can you go see what the expectation, like what did Pick 6 preview have as expectation for Oklahoma this year as I read this? They're now 5-5. They end this season hosting Alabama and then on the road to Death Valley to play LSU. They probably end the season 5-7 and bowl ineligible for their first season in the SEC as their rival will play for the conference title. Oklahoma not even making a bowl game, projected to finish 15th out of 16th in the SEC. That's M tier worthy after Jackson Arnold was hyped up all off season. I will say just right now, you're a lot of, first, I'm not even disagreeing with you. But just as a matter of record, as a matter of standard, I don't want to ever put a team into M tier based off of projected losses. I agree with you that they're going to lose to LSU and Alabama. I don't want to set a standard that we're going to put a team into M tier because we're projecting losses. Just as a standard, but let's still talk about Oklahoma. Pick Six Preview had them finishing 9th in the SEC. What is their conference record right now?
1-5.
Oof. At best, they can finish 10th.
And honestly, yeah, they're probably going to lose those last 2 games.
Probably, but again, don't want to put a team into M tier based off of projected losses. Let's take a look at their schedule real quick. The Oklahoma
I'll put it up here.
Sooners, they beat Temple. They barely beat Houston. They beat Tulane comfortably. They lose to Tennessee by 10. They beat Auburn, who is terrible for the record, by 6 points. 34-3 against Texas, 35-9 against South Carolina, 26-14 against Ole Miss. They trash Maine. And then they lose by 7 to Missouri.
Their best win is Tulane.
Their best
win is Tulane. Non-competitive.
Are we saying, hold on, I'm not even disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to ask this question out loud. Okay. Are we saying Tulane is a better win than Auburn?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. No. I'm not disagreeing. That just needed to be said out loud.
Okay.
That just had to be said out loud. It is close, but yes, I agree.
But to Jared's point here is that we have teams in M tier based on high expectations.
Right.
So we had Oklahoma State and M tier.
They're currently like 3-9, or last I looked anyway. Like, they were supposed to compete for the Big 12 title, and last I looked, they were 3-9.
They are 3-7, 0-7
in conference.
0-7 in conference.
Okay.
So that's the difference there, is that Oklahoma State was projected to win or be in talks of winning their conference. Oklahoma was never in talks of winning the SEC this year. Yes, they're 5-5 right now, looking to potentially have a losing record at the end of the regular season.
Now, to Austin's point, though,
but what was the expectation with Oklahoma, though?
To Austin's point, he makes a very good point that if they do lose the next 2 games, where he said it somewhere here. At best, they can finish 10th in the SEC. If they finish 10th in the SEC, that's basically expectation.
Yeah.
Because they were projected to finish 9th.
How about this?
That being said, if the season ends the way we're expecting it to end for them, I feel very comfortable putting them in M tier. I just don't want to do it based off of projection.
Dare we say, Jared, is that Oklahoma is on M tier watch? Is on the M tier watch list?
Yes, 100% they are.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. M tier watch list, 100%.
Right, we're good with that.
Yeah,
we're good with that then.
Like, if they lose their last 2 games, which again I'm fully expecting to happen. Hell, I tell you what, if they get blown out by Alabama, if they look, what's, do we have an early spread on that? What's the early spread? Alabama, Oklahoma.
Let me look.
No, it's not this week. They still might be. I know, but they still might have it as listed.
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right. M tier and waiting. M tier watch list. Hold on. We can do a thing here. Let me just move Stanford. It's the first time we've talked about Stanford all year, I think. It's just me getting them out of the way. And let's just move Oklahoma all the way over to the right, I guess.
No way.
What?
No way. I mean, the early. I don't know if you can bet on this, but I just went to Vegas Insider.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama and Oklahoma game.
Okay.
Guess what the spread is?
24.
Alabama by 2.
Shut the up.
Yeah.
No way. That's not right.
Yeah. Something's not right.
That's not right. That is just straight up not right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just simply incorrect. If you can put money on that, Kyle, just go put money on that real quick.
Yeah.
They lost to Texas by 31. They lost to Ole Miss by 12. That's to Missouri by 7. They lost to Tennessee by 10.
Yeah, I don't know.
Losing to Alabama by 2 would be far and away their biggest accomplishment of the year. That would be the best thing they did all year if they lost Alabama by 2 points. Go put money on it then. That's ridiculous.
I was just making sure this wasn't basketball too. So
that's probably a good check. That's probably a good check. All right. That's, if you can go put money on that, go put money on that, except this isn't financial advice. This show's only for entertainment. No reasonable person would actually think that I am offering free gambling advice on the show. Okay. How was that, Esquire?
All right. So to cover this, I know we're really long on time here. So in S tier, we have Ohio State. We have Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. And then in A tier to round up our top 12, no particular order, Notre Dame, Indiana, Boise State, BYU, Tennessee, Penn State, SMU, Alabama, and Ole Miss.
B tier is Texas A&M, Colorado, Georgia, Miami, Clemson, Louisiana Lafayette, Tulane, and Army.
Army strong.
Army smash.
All
right. That's it. That's the end of the show. Kyle, do you have anything in Kyle's Corner?
Do I have anything in Kyle's Corner? I think I know there was a lot of upset Columbus Crew fans, but rest assured that both Cincinnati and Miami both have lost as well too. So I don't care who wins.
Yeah. I would consider taking Alabama up to 16.5. You literally heard me guess it would be 24. That was my honest reaction. Kyle asked me to guess that spread, and I put it at 24.
Ohio State's a 30.5 point favorite against Northwestern.
Did you say 27? I didn't see it. That's okay.
It's not enough, Kyle. Yeah. 30.5. Yeah. We'll cover that on Thursday's episode.
I don't know, man. The Wrigley Field, Ivy, and Chicago and stuff. I don't know. All right. That's it. That's the end of today's episode. Tonight's ending music, punk band out of Cincinnati called the Dopamines, will be ending today's show. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, these are the Dopamines.